This is Sports Charlotte, the podcast about sports in Charlotte, and it is powered today by Football 704. And my name is Herb White. I'm editor-in-chief at the Charlotte Post, joined by Cameron Williams, staff reporter at the Post, and special guest today, West Charlotte High School football coach, DJ McFadden, the new Lions football coach. Welcome to the podcast. And I guess the first thing that I can think of is how's the transition going?
It's been good, man. Obviously the transition just from moving jobs from Independence to West Charlotte took a little bit of time. I was hired in January and I literally just got here like 2 weeks ago. So, that was a little longer than we would have liked, but I've been in the building about 2 weeks. Love the building, love the admin here, love the teachers here and the kids, man. It's been good, bro. Kids are working hard. Everything's been good.
Well, Coach, I got to ask. I mean, this is a new era of sports, really in high school football, and a lot of high school kids are treating it like it's college now, where the
Yeah, for
transfer
sure.
portal never stops. A lot of guys leaving the program, but to the ones that stayed, just what's your message to those guys? Because obviously, with a new coach, things whatever reasons the kids feel they need to leave, some have exited the program, but for those who stayed, what's your message to the ones that are loyal to the West Charlotte program and are willing to be taught and coached and led by you?
It's your time. The same. My message to them has been, the same way the guys that left that were high profile name guys. I mean, at one point they were you, where nobody knew them, where they were young and they were waiting for opportunities. So, all that did was open up a lot of opportunities for a lot of guys to make a name for themselves. And one thing I've learned to learn quick is that we got a good, heavy group of young kids that are big, fast, and working their tails off, bro. So we love what we see right now. We were able to keep some older guys that have really bought into what we brought to the program and are leading us right now. And then the young guys are working their tails off, and they've really, used, the guys leaving and the outside noise of what the program's going to be and put a chip on their shoulder. And, I've helped with that. I give them a little boost with that. And, everybody's saying we're going to be this and we're going to be that. So they pretty much calling you nothing and let's get to work so we can, get ready for the season. So I love how they've handled all the outside noise in the movement. They're excited for their opportunities to make a name for themselves. And I'm telling you, we got a lot of good young guys that you guys will be writing about here real soon.
When you talk about the brands and everything, you're let's face it, you're identifiable with Independence High School.
Right, right.
You played football there, won state titles there, coached there up until earlier this year,
Yeah.
and now you're making a transition. What is that like to leave home? Because Independence is home for you. You made your mark there, and now you left home and you're trying to make a mark someplace else.
Yeah, I mean, look, like just like any other thing in the real world, you gotta leave home at some point. So you can't stay home forever. I think for me, like I said, the biggest thing for me was is trying to disconnect from that. Everybody knows from independence. Like I said, like my college career didn't go the way I might have liked it to. So when you talk about DJ McFadden in football, all you associate me with is independence. And I had good years there as a player. I had good years there as a coach, and I just thought it was time for me to kind of disconnect and what a better community and school and history to come to. I think this culture of the school fits me perfectly. I think these kids fit me perfectly. The admin has been nothing but supportive. The community has been nothing but supportive. The alumni have been nothing but supportive. And it's been a good situation, bro. So the transition for me, like I said, I'm always an alumni of Independence and I'm always going to love Independence and I want Independence to be successful except for 1 week of the season. But right now, I'm really excited to, leave my mark here at West Charlotte in this community.
There's
Coach,
always those expectations too when
Mhm.
when you talk about West Charlotte because they
Mhm.
will gripe and grouse when stuff isn't going right, uh,
Mhm.
and of course when they're winning, they say, "Well, why not? We're West Charlotte,"
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Is that some extra leverage? Let's put it in terms of this is the type of job. In many ways, it's like a college job because the expectations are always there at West Charlotte.
Yeah, like if you consider yourself a ball coach, like you want those expectations to win. But I always say, like, nobody's gonna put more pressure on themselves to win than I put on myself. And those expectations, I've been dealing with them expectations since I was 15, 16 years old when I was the quarterback at Independence, taking over a team that was on the 70 game win streak. I used to hear it from the stands, you know what I mean, and parents getting on a 15, 16-year-old quarterback when things possibly didn't go right. So, I feel like I've always had expectations on me, even as a young teenager, to win. I put those expectations on myself from the beginning of my career as a head coach at Independence, and nothing's going to change here. Like I told the kids, I don't care who's left. I don't care how many 4 or 5 stars we left. The expectation is the expectation. And the kids are really taking that and running with it.
Coach, when we talked in January at your introductory press conference, which, as a sidebar, I will add that the Charlotte Post was the only media at, but we talked
Definitely
about
was.
we talked about changing the culture and your idea of changing the West Charlotte culture so that you don't have to have limited ticket sales and eradicating the stigma of, well, West Charlotte, that community is a bad population, and really trying to get that stigma changed amongst CMS, amongst schools outside of CMS. How have you, I know you've only been kind of boots on the ground for a few weeks, but how have you really gotten in and tried to instill with your players that, hey, we need to act like this. We need to show people that this is going to be different.
Well, the first thing I would say is this school gets a bad rap. Like I said, I've been here for 2 weeks, man, and we got great kids. We got great students. I think every school is going to have their issues. But the rap that this school get is really truly, I will say, like, unfair now that I'm in here and I'm able to be here, from 7:15 to whenever I leave in the afternoon. As far as the football program, we have kind of taken on a different approach as far as our discipline and accountability. We've already had to kind of deal with some little things already practice wise, just to let them know, I mean what I say and I say what I mean. But I will say is they've taken that head on. They understand it. And for the most part, they're completely bought into the things that we're bringing to this program as far as that discipline and accountability. And you can already start to see the shift of what we want this program to be. And it's just little things as far as like how we want to leave the weight room set up once we're finished. I will say the most, the biggest thing for me and the most gratifying thing for me thus far in this process was probably after our fourth day going into the weight room. We had just finished and I came back down because I thought I left like a charger in there, and I looked at the weight room and it was set up exactly how we wanted it set up. There wasn't a bottle on the floor, and when I saw that, I was like, okay, we're starting to figure it out already. So those little things, I think, and it's a lot of situations where kids want that discipline and they want that accountability. You just got to be willing to come in there and stand on it. And I'll tell the kids every day, I have a standard and I'm going to stand on that standard, and we're going to roll from there. But credit to the kids, man. Like, they have completely, the ones that have stayed, they have completely bought into that. They hold each other accountable now, which is very real. And like I said, I'm excited to see these young boys continue to take the steps and grow.
When you look at, I guess, spring ball, it's a high school thing now too, where you get together and you lift weights and you do the skull sessions in terms of the playbooks and things like that. What is the vibe now in terms of making that switch? And we talk about transitions because now the players have to make a transition too. They're transitioning to a new head coach and all the other things that go with that. Kind of give us what the pace looks like in terms of being able to get them up to speed to not only your expectations, but the execution of what you want on the field.
Yeah, and again, that was another surprising thing. Like, we have smart kids, man. Like, we've been installing, and we'll go out and do what we call formation drills just to see guys line up and do formations and motions and things like that. And we talk about as a staff, like, every day, like how fast they've picked up what we've installed so far. We can go to a 7-on-7 tournament right now and execute at a high level. And I thought that was most surprising with this whole deal. They picked it up quick. Like I told them when we came in, I didn't create a playbook on huddle or nothing that I'm going to give you. I expect you to come in these meeting room with notebooks, and whatever you write down is going to be your playbook, and what you don't write down, you won't have. And they actually bought into that. and they actually go home. I told them, I'm gonna hold you accountable for your job. You're not gonna put all this on me. You're not gonna, you know what I'm saying? Everything's not gonna be on me. Like, I'm gonna do my part, but you're gonna go home and you're gonna study your playbook, you're gonna put some time in. And what we say, investing and spending time, we're gonna make sure we invest our time the right way. And I will say those kids have been going home and investing their time into the right things, because when we come out and we go over some things and we start running some things, they're picking it up and they're able to line up in motion and move. So I would say, man, like, these 2 months that I've been here have been real good. Just as far as the how we lift and how we run, and then the football aspect of these kids, they're hungry, and you can tell in their work.
Coach, a bit of a two-part question for you. A, do you consider yourself as a coach more of a kind of quarterback whisperer? Because just looking at the quarterbacks you've had, they don't jump off the table as far as like from a height standpoint or
Mhm.
from a metric standpoint. But when you coach them up and you start to see guys like Justin Jones, uh, guys like that might be undersized, start to really
Mhm.
play really well. And how have you started to develop your relationship? This is part B with Jamori Nichols, a guy who obviously got a lot of talent, really quick quarterback, has a solid arm. How have you started to develop y'all's relationship and going into, I believe, his senior year now?
Yeah. It's tricky because I'll be completely honest. I mean, we don't really know where he stands with everything. We kind of go through it a little bit with him, and until we kind of figure out exactly what it is. Um, but with the young guys though, I've played the position, so I understand the time and the care that position needs. And I take my time with those guys. As far as the system, I think we run a very quarterback friendly system. I think we run a complicated system though. Like, it's going to take you to, really put some time into it. But the one thing I would like to say that I do that I think has really helped me out, help my quarterbacks out, is I don't go into a season. How do I want to put this? Saying that we're going to be the exact same that I was with Jared Street as I was with Justin Little. I'm going to look and see what those guys do well and what they can't do well, and then I'm going to tailor their offense around their strengths and what they can do. So yeah, man, like I said, me playing it and me being coached by arguably, I think, the best high school coach ever, has kind of helped me transition into my coaching style as coaching quarterbacks, and just making sure there's a healthy relationship where we can communicate on the things. I may like a play that he may not like. If you don't like it, well, I'm not going to call it on a Friday night because I'm not out there throwing the ball. So just having that open communication between quarterback position, making sure he understands his mechanics in the system. I think all those things are important, man. So, like I said, we've been working, and they've been picking it up well. And one thing like I told my AD, one thing where Charlotte will never have to worry about while I'm here is bad quarterback play. Like, we're gonna be able to play some quarterbacks.
Yeah. In terms of high school sports and just sports period these days, I'm old enough to have seen screamers as coaches, guys who don't mind getting in your face and telling you all kinds of stuff. Uh, but times have changed. Parents don't necessarily want to see that. The athletes don't want to see that necessarily. Uh, Talk a little bit about where you are on that. And football is a very emotional sport.
Yeah.
Everybody understands that. How do you get the point across to today's athletes without doing the old school kicking and screaming as a coach?
I got some old school in me though. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it gets to that, I'm intense, and I get after it. But I think what you have to focus on with these kids today before you can get to that point is making sure you build the relationship with them so they understand, you know, it's genuine.
Mhm.
And I think that's the main thing. I also think too, you have to know the player that you're dealing with. Every kid can't be coached the same. There's some kids to where, I can get in your face a little bit to get you going and get my point across. There's some kids where I might have to figure out another approach. Um, but I do like to consider myself one of those new school, old school coaches. I am a player's coach, but at the same time too, like they know once we get to work, then we cross that line and start practicing that, I'm gonna turn into a different cat, and they understand that, and I've always been able to, you know, be me out there and my style. Like I said, I do get after it a little bit, but my kids have always known that even at other places that I do love them and I care about them and genuine. And they also know too, like if you get me to that point, you probably you probably done did something that we've talked about over and over and over again. So now it's like, okay, you want smoke? Here it is.
You deserve this.
Right. But like I said, it's a thin line between, having that relationship with the kid to where you can do that and still maximize his potential and still get the most out of him.
Well, Coach, I got to ask about this schedule. Was this schedule, it's the non-conference more specifically, was
Yeah.
it done before you got there, or did you have a say in scheduling Carleton, Somerville, obviously Grimsley, and I mean Monroe's not going to be a slouch either. So just
Yeah.
talk about the non-conference, your involvement with it, and if there was any, and just kind of how you plan to navigate that, because that's a gauntlet.
No, for sure. So it were three games that were already set just on the second year. West Meck, we're going to play West Meck every year because that's a rivalry.
Yeah.
Monroe, this is the second year of the contract. Grimsley, this is the second year, but I did have to find two games, and
So you
I
went out
couldn't get
there,
nobody.
Carleton and
I
Somerville?
couldn't get nobody to play it. So Carrollton coach called me, and the first time he called me, I was like, Coach, like I don't know if you heard, we lost a few cats, but and Deshaun Baker's my man, but I was like, I do have a coach that might be willing to answer your call. Like, here's his number. So, but
Wow.
so I kept looking and nobody would play us. So when he called me back, I was like, look, like I'm not afraid to play anybody. We're gonna be young this year, but we'll do a 2 year with you and come down. I think it's gonna be a great experience for our kids. They got nice facilities down there, nice stadium down there, and like I've always been a firm believer, even my years at Indy, like those first 5 games in the non-conference, like I want to test my guys and I want them to go through everything that they can go through within the non-conference games. That way, when we hit the conference, there's nothing we haven't seen. And that's always been a benefit to me my first 5 years at Indy, to where we would, last year we had Gaffney, Christian, Lake Norman, Palisades, and I can't remember who the last team was, but and Huff. And we went through everything. We had a close one against Gaffney to where we had to come back and win it in the last minute, 2-3 minutes. We got blew out by Huff, and we had some close ones. So, by the time we hit, late in the season, there was nothing we haven't seen. And I think that paid dividends for us definitely in the playoffs, to where it was like, man, we've been battle tested. We've been down before and had to come back. We've been blew out before. We've been humbled. So I keep that same mentality. Like I told the kids, the schedule's the schedule, regardless of who's here. We're not changing it, and all we need to do is get ready. And it's a lot of opportunity and a lot of money out there in some of those games for a lot of guys to kind of go ahead and make a name for themselves. So, we're gonna work. Yeah. We're gonna scheme them up. We'll be prepared. And we'll be ready to go.
When you talk about the schedule, obviously everybody's goal in March is to be playing in November, and in North Carolina, considering the way things have gone the last couple of years, especially in the 8A ranks, there's the bully on the block, which is Huff. And not necessarily saying what would happen if West Charlotte and Huff got together in the playoffs in 2026, but is there a spot where you would say, you know what, we've had a good year if we do this? Now, whether it's Huff or getting to the whatever round of the playoffs it is or state title, that's up to you to answer. But what would success for you look like in year one at West Charlotte, considering the realities that you're facing today?
I mean, I expect to win, regardless of, again, who left and who came and goes. Like, we expect to win. Success for us is looking like, obviously, if you talk about a building standpoint, the things we're doing in the building, I'm definitely focused on that from some of the things the admin has asked me to do with these kids in the building. But football wise, go 1-0 each day and go from there. As long as these kids are getting better every day, we talk about getting 3% better every day. We're getting 3% better every day. I'm telling you, we have a lot of talent that's still here. And I think we're going to surprise a lot of people by what we do this year with this young talent. There's a lot of names that you don't know. It's a lot of faces that you haven't seen over the last few years, but This school, I will say, this school, if you even look at the basketball team, this school is filled with sophomores. Like I've never seen anything like it. Like every kid you talk to in this building is a sophomore. Um, and we are loaded with young talent. So, for me, I do expect us to win. I do expect us to win the conference. And, we'll take care of the playoffs when they come around. We're not worried about one specific team, nothing like that. The guy, like, we're not thinking about a semifinal game. We're not even thinking about the playoffs. We're thinking about today's workouts and trying to make sure we go 1-0 today and get 3% better today. We want to be where our feet's at. We're not even thinking about August 22nd and thinking about Grimsley right now. We're a long ways away from that. I want us to focus on the next upcoming day. That's the most important day. The most important day to this football program right now is today. And it's what we do in today's workout. And that's kind of what our mindset is right now.
Well, Coach, the last one I've got for you, I wanted to talk. You mentioned basketball, fresh off a state championship. What does that do for the building itself to know that, okay, look, we got a new football coach in place. We're just a few years removed from a football championship. Now we're back to basketball prominence. It seems like West Charlotte, I mean, there's athletes everywhere. It's a successful school in all kinds of sports. But what does that do for the morale of the school when we talked about earlier changing the narrative behind a school that, hey, this school's successful in a lot of athletics. Now let's just transition that to the community.
Now, yeah, the community's definitely been excited since those boys have won that championship, and even the football players. Like we had workouts that day, and before we started, we actually watched it, and ever since then, as soon as we hit the weight room, that's all they've been talking about is we gotta get us another one. We gotta get us another one, and we understand it's a process. It's a hard process to win the championship, and I'm making sure that they understand that. It's a hard process to even get to the game, to even get that far. You know what I mean? So. My biggest thing to them is we have to fall in love with the process of what it's going to take to win that championship. And that's the message I've been trying to send, not focusing on winning a championship, but focusing on the process of what it's going to take to actually get there. And then once we get there, we'll focus on winning it. But if you can't buy into the process and focus on the process and do what you need to do day in and day out in the building, outside the building, on the field to actually get there, then you don't even have a shot. But the community is definitely excited. The alumni are definitely, they don't care who's left. They definitely are expecting another championship. And like I tell them, it's going to be a process. But the one thing I can guarantee is that we're not going to cheat that process, and we're going to work our tails off to get there.
Coach, let's talk about legacy a little bit. And when you talk about West Charlotte, the players, they kind of speak for themselves. But I want to talk about the legacy of coaches and where you hope to fit in with that group. You're talking about folks from Jack Martin to Tom Knotts to Bruce Harden, Sam Griner, and you. Championship winning coaches, people who are legendary in this county. Where do you hope to fit in with that legacy as winning West Charlotte coaches?
I got all the respect in the world for everybody that comes before me. I've learned that as a player playing at Independence and the quarterbacks that came before me. But I take on the same approach. Like, I'm not Chris Leak. I wasn't Joe Cox. I'm going to just focus on being the best DJ McFadden I could be. And if I can do that, then I'll be good enough to do the things that we need to do. And it's the same thing here. I know all about the coaches that have come before me, and they're great coaches. Sam did a tremendous job, but I'm not Sam Griner. I'm not Tom Knotts. I'm not going to try to be those guys. I'm going to be myself. And I'm going to do the things I know I can do. And the success will come behind that. Fitting in, I don't even want to say I want to fit in with those guys, you know what I'm saying? But when I do leave from here, I do want you to mention me amongst those names. But that's not really a goal of mine, to be mentioned with names and do all that stuff. I'm me. That's for the outside people to do and make lists and decide all that stuff right here, man. My job is to make sure I get these kids graduated, give them a good experience, mentor them, get ready for the real world. And then in between that, we're going to win some ball games and win championships.
Okay. Well, very philosophical of you. But,
you like it?
And DJ, thank you so much for joining us. And I know you've got tons of stuff to work on: school, football, who knows what else, but that's the way it is in high schools. I understand. Thank you so much, and best of success this season and moving forward with the Lions.
No,
And
man, I appreciate y'all.
and for
You know
all of
you'll see me
you,
around.
yeah, and for all of you who are watching this or listening to it on on Queen City Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course our friends at YouTube. Be sure to ring the bell so you can get the podcast whenever it drops, as well as go to our website, thecharlottepost.com, become a subscriber, a donor, and subscribe to our sports newsletter. It comes out every Thursday. And we will see you around because this is still Football 704, and there's a lot of football going on. We're going to talk about it. And with folks like Coach DJ McFadden, it's going to be an exciting year. Thank you so much for spending some time and dropping some knowledge with us, Coach. And everybody have a great day out there.